Which lighting is better?
All right.
What do you think? This one? This one?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I
Pretty
thought.
natural. Pretty muted.
Yeah. All right.
I look like I'm in front of a TV.
Yeah. My beard's getting too long to fit in the frame.
You gotta start gelling it out like in your caricature of yourself.
I know. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to Comics in the Making. My name is Ryan Holgerson. I'm the creator of Slackmatic, and I'm joined, as always, by Levi Erickson, the creator of The Big. Levi, how you doing, man?
Doing great. I'm excited for this episode.
Me too. What are we doing? I have no idea.
Origin story.
Origin
It's the
story.
origin story episode.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how we got into comics in the first place. So Levi, what I always like to know this. Like, what was the first comic you got?
I don't remember the first comic I got, but it would have had to have been like one of those Harvey or Walden comics, like
Yeah.
Richie Rich or Casper,
Uh-huh.
because it would have been something I would have had to have shared with my older sister. And I'm like 3 years old, I'm pretty sure. And she would not have wanted a superhero comic, so it would have been one of those without a
Right.
doubt.
That's cool. Mine was
Not cool, dude. Is Richie Rich or fucking Casper? That's not cool at all, man.
I mean,
We're talking
it's not horrible.
1977,
There's
1978.
some cool retro aspects to like Casper and stuff like that
No,
that
no.
I can
I mean,
appreciate.
I mean, I mean, thanks for that, but no, there's not. But then again, I guess it's better than like, a 1978-ish time period, and if it would have been X-Men in one of those issues, and of
Yeah,
course it would have got torn up
right.
100%. But I will say this: there was a Man Thing comic book that got into my hands, which is a weird sentence to say, but I remember it
It
freaked me
was too
out.
easy. I wasn't even. Oh, really? The man thing got into your hands, did it?
But if there were
Was it
bike,
the giant size man thing?
but there were bikers, and I still remember this, and a chain got stuck in Man Thing's body, and that freaked me out as a kid because he's the you that's no good. You can't have a chain stuck in your body, bummer.
Yeah.
And I remember those two elements. And then fast forward to earlier this year, I was over at Hardy Boys, and he had a lot of, he has a lot of that kind of stuff, and I picked one up and had a cover that had bikers, and I thought, I remember bikers. Flipped through it, and sure enough, there's the chain getting embedded in Man Thing's body. I'm like, this is the one that it was probably an older cousins of mine comic, because I can't imagine any grandparent, parent, aunt, uncle, anyone going, "Hey, this is good for the 3-year-old kid." This will keep them quiet. For why would they bypass the colorful, Superman, Spider-Man, Flash things they would recognize? So it had to have been one of my older cousins.
Yeah.
But I do remember that, and those mental cues were there was enough recognition where I have that issue now in my possession.
Yeah.
And now I have the Man Thing in my hands once again.
I've been doing a lot. I don't want to say I've been doing a lot of that lately. But I've always had the man thing in my hand. I mean, they say you touch the man thing probably more than your phone, or at least the same.
Although
But
the no fear burn at the Man Thing's touch.
so I get you. But
You might want to get to the clinic for that.
I've been to the doctor enough lately. Uh, no, but I haven't. What I've been picking up a few issues of stuff that I had when I was a kid too. That
Yeah.
I just happened to be running into. I'm not really like, oh, I'm looking for it. I'll just be at some weird little comic shop or something like that, and I'll run into it. I found an issue of Uncanny X-Men. I don't remember the number or whatever. But what I do remember is there were like these alien hybrids, like getting into the X-Men or whatever and turning them into these monsters with like tentacles and stuff like that. And it's this great cover by Mark Silvestri of Wolverine, like kneeling on the ground and
Oh, yeah, yeah,
staring
yeah.
up, and he's got this like monster face or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had that when I was a kid, and I just recently found it. Well, recently, it was probably like last year or something like that. But I wanted to get it again. And Mark Silvestri is by far my favorite Wolverine artist.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've talked about it before, not on the show or whatever, but I still feel that Mark Silvestri, Dan Green is a art team that for whatever reason seems to fall under the radar a lot of times. I mean, I know Mark Silvestri certainly has gotten you know, his due or whatever. It's not like he went unnoticed, but I just love Dan Green's inking over him because it's just so fluid and
Mhm.
brushy and fast. I mean, shit, they were doing like 2 issues of Wolverine a month there for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, you know?
Yeah. So, I've always loved that combination, like, way more than, like, a Jim Lee, Scott Williams.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and sadly, we lost Dan Green a couple weeks ago, from what I
did
understand.
we? Oh my
Yeah,
god, I didn't know
yeah.
that.
So,
Well, I think he was. I mean, I don't know a lot about him, to be honest, but I
and I
think he was older than a lot of those guys and stuff like
yeah,
that. I mean, Dan Green had been working for a while,
and
even when he was inking Mark and stuff like that.
you bet.
Man, why I don't it seemed like that really flew under the radar as far as comic news. I don't understand.
And your ear is definitely more to the ground than mine is, so, um, I figure you'd know, but
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
we'll figure
Um,
that out and edit accordingly.
yeah.
So, Paul,
So,
yeah.
uh,
Where'd you I mean,
so I think my first no, well, so I know what my first comic book was. Um, it was a issue of Captain Power. And if people don't remember who Captain Power was, Captain Power was a Canadian sci-fi TV show. And it was like pretty big in like I guess like the mid 80s. It was probably like 85, 87, something like that.
They had
And
a
I
toy
think
line associated with it,
huh?
right? Is that the toy line that is supposed to
Yeah.
interact with the TV show?
So yeah, you could get like videos and put them in your VCR and
Yeah.
then get like these toy guns and ships that had like handles on them like
Yep,
guns
yep, yep.
and fly around and shoot the TV at like the
Yeah.
red colors and that would like kill the guys. And then you would have to like dodge out of the way when they would like shoot it at you. Um,
And it's
I mean,
supposed to pop your
they
figure out of the cockpit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they were for what they were amazing toys. Like those are toys I'd like to get my hands on. Uh,
They're expensive.
oh, I'm sure because
Those and
it
Centurions are some of the most expensive toys from the '80s.
yeah. I mean, and that, but I mean, I remember, and this is 30 years ago, but I remember them being high quality toys. I mean, they were nice, but I've always wanted the gun. I never had Captain Power's gun. I had his ship, and then we had the bad guy ship, like the black one. And we had some of the videos. Um, and but I love that TV show, and I had a bunch of the toys and stuff like that. And I think it was really probably just playing off the success of Terminator. It's got a lot of the same kind of like Terminator, like apocalyptic future run by machines and stuff like that. But so when I saw that comic, uh I was real excited about it. I think it was done by Continuity Studios, if I
Oh,
remember
wow.
correctly. Um, because I remember there being, I mean, it had to have been, but I remember there being a bunch of like Neil Adams ads
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
stuff for like crazy, was it Crazy Man or something like that, and Bucky O'Hare
Yep, yep.
and
I
stuff.
love
So like that,
I
so
love
it,
Bucky O'Hare.
yeah. So and it was fun because I'm like I said, this is my first comic. Um, and so I'm like, who the fuck is this Neil Adams guy? Like, I didn't know who that was or anything.
Were you aware of like comic collecting at the time when you got it?
Yeah. So so at the time we lived in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and that's a college town. Like James Madison University is there. So at the time we lived in a condo, and on either side of us were college kids.
No.
So on the one side we had college girls. It was a bunch of college girls living there, and then on the other side it was a bunch of college guys living there. And the guys, we were closer to the guys, and they like two of them collected comics, and I remember like going over there, and like they would just have stacks of comics.
Oh,
Um,
damn.
and later on, the one, like, he was an artist, so he actually did murals at the local comic shop, um, and stuff like that. Actually, that town, that's where Chris Sprouse went to school at JMU.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I remember there being a signing. He was doing Hammerlock or something like that, some bullshit DC title, but
You mean?
what was it? What was it? Maybe 5, 6 years later, he's co-creating Tom Strong with Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So he went on to a pretty good career. Um, but yeah, but he was from there. So yeah, I was aware of comic collecting, and I'd always been a nerd. Like, I mean, from my early, I mean, I was into Star Wars. I was into uh anything fantasy. We would go to the library if I found a book on dragons or wizards or whatever. Like, I
Right.
just, all of that stuff I soaked up. I loved He-Man, you know. Um, so comics was a really natural step for me to
Right.
get, you know. Um,
I mean that,
so
and that
what?
makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So for you though, like, at what point were you like, I want to do this?
As far as like collecting comics, or
No, I mean, like, I want to draw the comics. I want to create comics, because I mean there's like, there's like that point, when I first started reading them, it almost didn't even click that you could do that, and
yeah,
make
yeah,
your own.
right.
So like for you, what was the point where you were like, this is what I want to do. I want to draw these.
As soon as I got into comics for collecting purposes, I immediately started copying what I saw on the covers and the pages.
Oh yeah.
I still have some of those original drawings. So I tried to copy the cover of Wolverine number 12, I think it is. That's that John Byrne. He's running, the one where Wolverine's running with his claws. That one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But no, it's an iconic, Wolverine pose.
yeah. Sure.
Um
I think I do know what you're talking. Is that
uh
the one they used to use for the corner box for
no,
one time?
I think that was an Arthur Adams they used for the corner box.
Okay.
But but so I did that, kind of try to ape that cover. My first X-Men comic, and that's what got me to want to collect comics, was classic X-Men, I think
Oh
number
yeah.
40 or 41.
Yeah.
I didn't even know classic X-Men was such a thing. I just knew I needed to get an X-Men comic.
Yeah.
And that's what was on the spinner, and I grabbed it, and I took it. I was so happy. I took it to my buddy. It's like, I got an X-Men comic, and he's like, "There's not an X-Men comic." I was like, "What are you talking about? It's an X-Men." He goes, "No, that's classic X-Men. It's a reprint of old stories." you
Yeah.
know. And I'm like, well, fuck. But that was my entry point, and I can't remember which issue of the original run it reprinted, but I copied um, panels inside that book, and I still have those drawings. So right away, I was like, okay, cool. I like this.
Yeah.
I think I can do this. And
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it was much later. And I think that was whatever year that, if you date Classic X-Men number 40, 41. That's when I got into collecting comics, rather than just something my parents would throw at me, on a road trip.
Yeah.
Um, Although I will say that the first comics I ever bought aftermarket was a couple years prior to that, about 1986. I was into sports cards, and my dad and I went to a card show, and I don't remember it being like a combined card and comic show. I think it was all cards, but this one booth had a couple comics on it that caught my attention, and they were GI Joe comics,
Oh,
and it said this, the strangest secret of all explained, whatever, origin of Snake Eyes, and GI Joe was my world. I mean, Star Wars was the top tier,
yeah.
but they hadn't given me a movie in 3 years.
Yeah.
GI Joe was on 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, I think they were $3 a copy for number 26 and 27.
Yeah.
So I bought those, and my dad was like, "What are you wasting your money on that? Think of all the packs of Topps cards you could buy for that." I was like, I gotta have them. I gotta know. So those are the first comics I deliberately bought.
Yeah.
Or because it didn't strike me to go, let's investigate this further.
Yeah.
Because every comic I had between the Richie Rich comics and then was just like a one-off.
Yeah.
We were on a road trip, whatever. That'll keep me quiet for a while.
Right.
And I knew that they ended on cliffhangers, but there was never continuation. I never had a chance to get
Well,
the next issue.
it was so hard back then.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was probably the same. I don't think I really I mean, once I got that Captain Power comic and my brother had gotten a comic too. He got a Captain America comic. And in all honesty, I like that Captain America comic more. Um but that started that started like the collecting. That was like, okay, now I want to get these. But it was, I was, let's see, I was probably 7 or 8 when we got that. So I mean, I think I was probably like second grade. It probably wasn't until I was in sixth grade where I was able to have access to a comic store
Yeah.
and get every issue, like, as they're coming out. Because before that, it was just, oh, we're at a bookstore and here's a spinner rack, or we're at a 7-Eleven and here's a spinner rack, and I'm just grabbing whatever. Like, I remember I really liked Punisher for a little while, so I had some Punisher comics, but they were all over the place. Like, it was the same as you. Like, I had no idea what was happening.
Yep.
Um, so I remember I had Punisher, I had some X Factors, I had some Walter Simonson X Factors.
Nice.
I had the one, I don't even remember, where Archangel and Sabretooth are fighting.
Yep.
It's an awesome battle. Like, I mean, he's like, Archangel's like flinging his wings like through
Yeah. Yeah.
Sabretooth's stomach and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh my God,
A
like,
lot of black splatter because we're
oh
not
yeah.
red.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, so
I think
uh,
that was a Liefeld McFarlane cover, and
was
I
it?
I tried to ape that. I copied that cover, and I still have it now.
Oh, that's cool. But yeah, no, I definitely, I'm trying to think. Let's see. I was probably fourth or fifth grade because I would always draw, but I
Yeah.
don't think I got really serious until sixth grade, really, like really getting serious. Like, I think that's when I got my first draft, my drafting table. Like, my parents got me that for Christmas. I got a
Okay.
bunch of art supplies and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
remember in fourth or fifth grade, that's when I made the declaration, like, this is what I want to do. I want to make comics. But like I said, I wasn't really drawing until, like, I was drawing, but I don't think I was taking it like super seriously.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's like you kind of don't realize how much, when you're that young, like how much work you actually have to pour into it. I think in the
Oh,
back
yeah.
of my head, I was like, I'll just go to college and learn how to do it, and I'll go do it.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same thought process, by about, ninth grade, 10th grade, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I spent more time with, trying to do the punk rock stuff.
Yeah.
So for years after that, I leaned hard into the music side of it. And, it's not hard to understand why. It's kind of a lower bar, especially if you're playing a certain kind of music
Oh yeah.
and you've got ostensibly two or three other people to kind of help pull you along if your chops aren't there.
Yeah.
Um, there's the social aspect. So, and that's what I wanted. So I leaned much harder into music, um, for a bunch of years.
Right.
Therefore,
I see. I started late with music. Like I didn't even start learning guitar till I was 18. Um, so all through high school, I was still like all about comics. Um, and by the time I got into high school, let's see, when did Image happen? Image happened 92.
yeah, 92.
So I was 12. So I was in middle school then, and I was all about Image. Um, and really, I gotta say, overall, Image Comics changed my trajectory um as a cartoonist, because before that I wanted to draw Wolverine. Like I wanted to be a Wolverine artist. That's what I wanted to do. And uh when Image happened and I was like, "Oh, these guys are doing what they wanted, like whatever they want to do, and they want to own it and reap the benefits of that." And I was like, "Oh, that seems a lot cooler." And then when Image happened, at the same time, with Wizard,
Mm,
because I was getting Wizard every month too,
yep.
and reading articles like Palmer's Picks and seeing the stuff in Palmer's Picks and going, this stuff looks so different.
Right.
And that's when the alternative and the independent stuff started looking way more appealing to me. And then at the same time, like when Spawn issue 10 of Spawn, which is the Dave Sim issue.
Yep.
And I'd never heard of Dave Sim, but there's this big long article in the back of Spawn, where Todd's writing about Cerebus and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's done this many issues of his book and he printed them all himself. And I was just like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then of course, because of Spawn, Cerebus started getting more and more press,
Oh yeah, 100%.
and they started carrying Cerebus in the comic shop and stuff like that. And then Bone, of course, Bone was that was the first comic I got my dad to like send money off for it to get it sent to us, because at the time we couldn't find it. And
Oh
it
wow.
and that looked so appealing to me, that art style. And I still remember the day that first I ordered the first trade paperback, and I think maybe the next two issues. So it was like the first six issues and then like seven and eight, like separate.
Oh
And
wow.
that's all that was out at the time. And uh and we got it on a snow day. And so I just remember sitting in that sofa in my living room and reading that thing like two or three times,
That's awesome.
and just blown away. Just blown away from it. And then I got a subscription. I had a subscription to Bone for a couple years.
Nice.
Uh but yeah, no. So by the time I was in sixth grade, sixth or seventh grade, that's when I was still getting some superhero stuff. Like maybe Savage Dragon. I really like Savage Dragon. I still think if you go back, that's really still the only really good book in Image. Um, I mean, I got a
Totally
bunch of
understand.
Spawns too. I love Spawn. but I grew, once Todd stopped doing as much with it, I kind of fell off.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that really, boy, that the whole image thing just opened my eyes to a whole nother world of comics. And then once
Yep.
my eyes were open, I mean, by my sophomore year of high school, I was done with superheroes for sure. I don't think, maybe if something really unique came out.
And you
Um,
know what's interesting, like that timeline that you give, although
yeah,
I'm a few years older than you,
yeah,
but the timeline matches up.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because by the
yeah,
time you're sophomore, we're talking about 95, 96.
yeah,
That's when I fell off of it too.
yeah.
And I'm 21 years old at that time. Um,
Hmm.
you know, and I think that speaks more to what the content was rather than, what age you are and what appeals to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit.
'Cause
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's that line, you're a sophomore. I'm a couple years out of, I'm ostensibly my first year of college.
yeah.
Um, whether I was going to class or not, that's a that's different. But yeah, but we hit the same wall at the same time, and I think it speaks to the content that was
Yeah,
being, because I remember just being frustrated with, I let the Hulk, I'd let Spider-Man, I'd let a lot of those superhero comics, fall, but I was still kind of steady on X-Men because that was the first one I got into, and I love Joe Madureira's art. Um, and I was reading Gen 13 on the Image side. That was my favorite book,
yeah,
the Image side. And but yeah, just somewhere right in there, I just got done with it. It just
yeah.
was whatever interest I had in that type of subject matter went away.
Well, and I don't even remember. It's funny because it's not. I don't remember it being like a conscious decision where I was like, I'm done with this. Um, Part of what helped with me, so my sophomore year, we moved from Virginia to Columbus, Ohio, and Columbus, Ohio, that's a comic town, man.
Yeah.
Um, and at the time when I moved there, I mean, Jeff Smith still lives there, but Jeff Smith was there a bone. Paul Pope was still there, I think. Um, and then we had Central City Comics, which was the store I normally went to. Unfortunately, it closed down. But then we also had the Laughing Ogre, which is still there. Still I mean, a highly regarded comic shop. And the thing is, these stores uh pushed the indie and the alternative stuff. So like when you walked into Central City, the first thing to your left was all the indies. That's what he put up there front and center. And I remember talking to the owner going, "Boy, I really appreciate you having this stuff." And he goes, "Well, if somebody comes in here and they want X-Men, they can fucking find it." And it's funny because now I think their attitude has completely changed now, but
Well, sure.
when I moved to Charlotte and I went to Heroes, uh, at the time at their location, they had the indies all the way in the back corner and it was hidden. And I said something to the guy who was working the counter. I was like, sure would be great if you guys could give a little more attention to the indies. And he said the same thing. Well, if people want that, they go and find it, and like, well, so like I get what you're saying, but where Central City had it right is he's trying to push that to the people that maybe had never thought about that stuff before.
No,
He
right.
wanted them to come in and go, "What's this? What's eight ball? What's hate?
Yeah.
What's Acme Novelty Library? And not like I get it. You've got those people that are gonna say, "Hey, I want to go look for this," and they're gonna find it. But like he was just trying to put that stuff front and center. And he'd
Yeah.
won an Eisner because of it, like this was but I mean, I think both stores in Columbus were Eisner winners at some point. I know Central City was. I'm pretty sure Laughing Ogre's gotten it. I could be wrong. I don't know. But anyway, being in that environment where I was already leaning towards that stuff, and then all of a sudden I have comic stores at my disposal
Yes.
that are carrying the stuff regularly. Um, that just, oh, I mean, it was just amazing.
Oh,
I
oh,
mean, oh, and
100%.
also both stores had mini comic sections too. Like they didn't just have like I mean, you could
Nice.
go and you could buy mini comics there.
That's so
So
cool.
yeah,
Like our
yeah.
our store in Hot Springs, Arkansas, it was a combination comics and sports cards.
Hmm.
And so by the end of the 80s and into the first couple of years of the 90s, I was going in there with like, my sports cards and trading them in on credit to get comics or selling them to get skateboard parts.
Yeah,
I think my yeah, I had several. I was really good at like pulling like key cards out of packs, and the
yeah,
Jerry Rice rookie card was like really hot, and
yeah,
and I had several of them, and so I know for a fact at least two decks were paid for by Jerry Rice rookie cards.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Man, Columbus was a good skateboarding town too.
yeah.
Like, that's where I was skateboarding. Dude, we went to, I know this has nothing to do with comics, but I don't care. We were we were at this like outdoor mall in Columbus. Um and they had a skate shop. So we're like, oh, let's go to the skate shop. So we just went in there just to look. And I had a Chad Knight maple board. And Chad Knight's from Columbus and or the central Ohio area or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had it. They had my board like hanging up, and I was just there was a guy behind the counter, and then there was a dude sitting down. And I was like, "Hey, I've got that Chad Knight board. Like, I like that board." And the guy goes, "He's right there." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "That's him right there." And Chad Knight was just sitting there, man. Oh my god, it blew my mind. My dad thought it was so funny. Because like that shit would just happen to me and my brother all the time. We would just run into people like,
Nice.
and stuff like that. But it was really cool.
Very
So
nice. Very nice.
yeah.
Um, yeah, like later on, you know, uh, my mom lived in Little Rock, and there was a couple times that she took me to the comic shop on. There was one on 65th Street called Pie Eyes Comics,
Hmm.
and I never had like a good long time. It was one of those places that, and this would have been, mid 80s, 80 on the back end of the 80s, but not late 80s yet. But it was just wall to wall. I was overwhelmed. I
Yeah.
had no idea what I was looking for. I had no idea what anything was, and it was just boxes and just stuff stacked all the like grungy comic shop that you can think of that is like,
Uh,
and I just wish that I would have had a chance to just
yeah.
go back in time and just like just pick through.
I think the first one, I'm trying to remember the first comic store I went into. I think the first one I went into was in I think it was in New Jersey. And that's where I bought my first comic too. We were on
Oh,
that's where my dad was from. That's where my grandparents on his side lived, and we were there visiting. But I remember, I still do this. Only I do it on my phone. You go somewhere and what do? You check the phone book. Where what
yeah,
comic
yeah,
stores,
yep.
And so I saw that there was a comic store in a mall that was really close to there. So my parents took us there. I think that's the first store I went to. And yeah, oh my god. It was just being in a room with like nothing but comics was just
Yep.
so amazing. And then what's funny is, we when we were living in Harrisonburg, like I said, I was just getting stuff from 7-Eleven or Walden Books or whatever.
Mhm.
And we were driving down one of the kind of main routes through Harrisonburg, and I look up on a hill and there's this building, and it's got paintings of like Captain America and the Hulk and Iron Man. And I'm like, Dad, what is that? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, we have to go. We have to go there. We have and
We must ascend the mount.
yeah, and we did. Yeah, and so I don't think we went right away, but it might have been like a week or two later. Like he was like, all right, let's go see what this is. And it was a comic store. It was, and that was my comic store for years until we moved to Ohio. Um,
Nice.
so it was that was awesome because like I said, being able to go and know I could buy the new issue of Wolverine or the new issue of X-Men.
Yep.
Um,
Continue
uh,
the story that, I left off
Namor,
with.
Namor. I always forget about Namor, dude. I was like, when Jay Lee came on Namor,
Yeah. It's didn't
I
make it
had
cool.
zero interest in that book. Zero fucking interest in that book. And when I saw that first Jay Lee cover, I mean, I was with Namor with Jay Lee from the first issue he did because I saw that cover and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I had every Jay Lee Namor issue.
Still didn't make it cool.
I mean, you don't have any of those?
You know,
They're
but
pretty fucking cool.
but you're talking to a guy who, like,
He
jumped in.
rips a dude's head off. Like he takes he like grabs a dude's head and just like
You're talking to a guy who jumped in, no pun intended, when Peter David was doing the Aquaman thing. So now you had hook hand, armor,
oh
like Aquaman. I was sold on that shit.
oh wrong with you.
Well, man, I mean, it's so funny, like different places, a little bit of age disparity, not too much,
Yeah.
but how similar these lines, parallel, when you talk about getting into comics
Oh yeah.
and it I feel like the content was doing this line and people were jumping in and out at the same time regardless, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, like when Image happened, that really did. I mean, that took everything exciting out of Marvel.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%.
for me, I mean, that's why I saw those Namor comics jumped out to me
True. It's
because that was after Image. Of course, then Image took him. Um, but even like Mark Texeria being on Wolverine, I love Tex now, but he had to grow on me too. Like this is not Mark Silvestri.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's a tough sell when what you
Yeah,
love is, takes off, that
yeah,
quick. So speaking of taking off, it's about time for us. You
it
got anything
is.
to add, bud?
Nope, nope, I'm good.
All right. Do the damn thing.
Please,
I said it this time.
good job.